Today's tale sees us playing a band ship, and I'd like to do a little bit of a tips and trick for what I've learnt so far. So the very first thing that you're going to have a choice in is who you take straight away, right? So you've escaped, and you're like, well, who do I take? I have no idea. What am I going to need later on? So you got your captain over here, and you got three choices, right? And the captain is pretty even across everything. He can go to level 5 on every single skill. So you'll notice that these guys can all go to 5 on one set of skills. There's a couple of guys that you're probably going to need more than others. So the navigator, not so much. I just use the captain here to navigate my ship, as he should, right? The captain should be driving. These scallywags here. What I do take is I take the gunner here. The reason I take the gunner is so that I can operate things like the chain shot a little bit quicker. Also, by the time he gets to level 5, he gets pretty good on the old chain shot there, and he can bring ships in pretty quick. I also bring in the marine. Now the reason you want the marine, and you're going to want to pick up more than one marine later on, is because you do a lot of hand-to-hand, and later on I'll talk about the fact that you have to board ships a lot if you want to get some of the bonus supplies here. So I tend to pick up the marine, and then you come over here and you're like, well, I've got a couple of other choices here. I've got the sailor who can repair the ship at a faster rate, or I can bring over a guy who can do a bit of healing. So repairing, I don't do it a lot. Sometimes you have to run around and repair a few things, but I don't think it's as important as having a surgeon here. The reason the surgeon is pretty important is because you can get someone like your captain here engaging, say, 2 people in combat. Even a marine, you can get 2 people in combat, and then you can run the surgeon up behind and heal the guy for basically quicker than he's dying, right? Also, every now and then you can get him to run around on your ship and heal people up. But I feel like the surgeon does a lot more for you than the sailor's ever going to do with his repairs here. Plus, you can start healing pretty quick with the guy. So, I just take the surgeon. So my next tip might sound a little funny, but exploration, always explore all the maps. And why I say this is because this is the very first map that you'll get given, right? And you could, the game says basically flew through the gate. And you're like, well, okay, cool. I should just meet the goal here and just run for this gate. But if you do that, you're missing out on all this loot right here. So there's actually 3 bits of loot on the very first map. And if you leave those behind, that is a solid 60 gold that you've just left behind. So I'll show you. This one here should be worth about, I think it's either 20 or 22 on the first map. 20. So yeah, so if you don't explore every single map, you are leaving gold behind. Often there's these floating barrels. If you meet the goals, don't just run straight for the gate. Always try and explore everything out. Get as much gold as you can, especially at the start. It is really rough on you if you don't have a lot of gold. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is positioning of your people and why I chose who and where. So I generally put my gunner, remember this is the very first engagement we've had, and I generally put my gunner up on my chain shot here. The reason I put my gunner over here is just so he reloads the chain shot just a little bit quicker, because you kind of want to start messing with the rigging here to close the distance, and I'll show you in a sec why. I then jam generally my generalist guys down on the cannons. I'm not looking to do a whole lot of damage to the ship straight away. I don't really care about damage that I'm going to do over here, because I am actually going to ram this guy. And then lastly we have Mr. Captain over here. So we're going to close the distance here. I generally close to about here. The reason you got to close into this bar here is because this is where you can ram people. And you can see the first load of chain shot didn't really get us in there, but the second load should get us in nice and close. And by the time we are close enough, we now have the maneuver to ram, right? So I'm going to ram these suckers. There's only 3 of them. You can see they're running back and forth, trying to keep the ship all happy here. We're going to brace up. And I'm going to pause here for a sec because I'm about to show you. So as soon as you ram, you kind of pause up and you just leap overboard. And the reason you leap overboard is because you have a lot better chance of just getting rid of these guys straight up. And you got to be quick with it, otherwise your ship parts like this and you're stuffed. Generally I'll just run onto the captain there. We'll get our medic out a little bit. He can go apparently everybody wants to hit my medic. He can go help out people. You can see that the captain does alright by himself. The medic will keep our little cutlass man here going. We can run him over, help out the captain, get everybody else on. So we've only taken this much damage, right, in the very first fight. If I was to stand around cannoning these people, it would take me a lot longer. So generally I find just ramming and capturing is a lot better. Now later on, taking over a ship with minimal damage is really important because you get resources out of it. So I'm going to actually show that off next. So here we are in our next battle, and once again I'm basically chain shotting down their rigging so that I can close this range. And I'm not even bothering to fire these cannons here because I know that I'm going to take this, and I want to do kind of the least amount of damage I can here. And I'll show you why you want to do the least amount of damage. So we're going to ram these guys. We're going to prep up. We're probably just going to move everybody down here. You can even get your captain off here as soon as you're attacking, right? The AI is going to get biffed onto the ground. We're going to jump overboard. Go on, boys. Give him some stick. Give him the stick. So we've kind of done down to yellow here on the damage, which isn't the greatest. Mr. Man overboard here should drown off in a second. Hopefully. Come on, lads. Alright, there we go. And this is why you always board. So the thing with boarding is you'll generally get provisions out of a boat. So you get both money and provisions. If you just blow people up, I tend to find you never get provisions. Provisions are still chance based. I don't always get provisions. But if you take the provisions, these provisions in a port will cost you, I think, about 30 gold. So you're basically getting an extra 30 gold on top of what you're already taking. And later on, when you get things like harpoons and stuff, the boarding actions become a lot easier. You don't even have to ram. You can basically just get in range, harpoon the ship, pull them in, and board straight away. And you've got a fairly solid chance of getting those rations. So, as long as you've kind of followed the tips that I gave before about boarding action on just about everybody you can, and exploring the map before you hit the quests, you should have a reasonable amount of gold. You can see here I've got 275. I think the first time I played through this, I was like, man, I'm really struggling for gold when I rolled into here, which is really good. Now, some of the things that I'm going to recommend for hull and harpoon, I'll tell you why. So, hull armor, I reckon, is one of the best things you can get. You can get 20% later on if you want, but the 10% right now basically just throws 10% extra straight onto your ship, right? So your effective health, because you're actually in the sprig right here, your effective health goes up by quite a bit. It basically turns into a sloop, right, except for without the extra guns. So I always feel like the armor is good, and the harpoons, because you're going to want to grapple onto the enemy and pull them in as best you can. And the other thing I was saying, as long as you're doing boarding actions, you should have a reasonable amount of supplies. And if you continue to keep doing it, you'll keep gaining supplies and never have to buy them ever again. I think in the playthrough that I'm doing at the moment, I have about 200 and something in the supply department, and I haven't even made it into the second quest, really. So you kind of just want to keep boarding everybody and doing the best you can. So I generally buy the hull and armor here. Now you got to be a little careful because you do want to have a little bit of money left over. So we're going to return to port and we're going to go into our tavern here. We're going to get paid a fair bit by our crew. Thank you, crew. Now, I reckon you should always pick up the next guy right here. And if you can afford it, which I can, I always think it's better to pick up another marine to be full. The reason this is important, if I could pick up another marine, I would. The reason having a full crew here is important is because straight away on the second map, you're going to be facing a group of Halifrons that are about 5 strong. And if you only have 5 people, it's a little hard, but doable. If you have 6, it gets a lot easier, right? Because suddenly you can have your medic running around healing people up while everybody else kind of takes care of business. Normally the game would ask you to buy a mortar. You can kind of, at this point in time, get away without the mortar, because you're not really looking to do a whole truckload of damage to the enemy. You're just kind of looking to screw up their sails so that you can get in and board them. Later on you can get a mortar because you will need it. But in the first few maps I find that the harpoons, the chain shot, and just boarding action will get you through the day. Most boats won't even have enough to really handle you as you jump aboard. So one of the other things I'd like to talk about is the Halifrons, right? Normally you'll come up against AI boats that at least have one. He's going to try and jump in the water. He's going to come and try and come at me. Now if this boat had a medic or the surgeon table up front, you'd think, oh yeah, if I do any damage to this Halifron, he's just going to heal. Well, the thing is the medic won't actually do any work to Mr. Halifron here. So if you put in some damage to Mr. Halifron before he even decides to come at you, then at least that way you'll have kind of sorted yourself out really well against fighting this guy, right? He normally jumps in the water, he normally comes at you, but for me, I actually really like doing the boarding actions myself. Boys, let's get ready to roll on in. Mr. Halifron's like, yo, what can I do here? No, sir, you're going to get shot up. Now he's going to jump in. Now he's going to come at us, and look at him. He's not in a good mood, right? So we're going to wait for him to board here, and we're going to deal him a stunning blow before we jump over here. So this is why I also recommend the harpoons, because I didn't have to, you know, I don't have to be too up close and personal against this boat, and I don't have to ram him as much as I would like. So we are just going to push on over here. We're going to get the captain in. He's going to pull us over. So the choices are, I could have rammed this guy, but you see how he's got the spikes? Through the harpoons, we can just pull ourselves in. Everybody can jump over, and we can just deal a crushing defeat to these guys. So yeah, doing damage to the Halifrons before they even get in the water to deal with you is a real good way to go. We'll get you over here. Get everybody just ganging up. We'll get Mr. Medic. Where are you? Are you just chilling somewhere? Not really. So you just heal up this guy. I mean, look at this guy. He's not even worried, right? He's a little worried, but he's not too worried. So we'll get out of here, and we will leave. So here's why I also like the grapple, the old harpoons, right? Is generally, sometimes the AI will just come straight in at you, and it makes it so much easier for you to really deal with things. I don't do a lot of damage to these guys. I don't want to. Because it's my belief that the less damage you do to the ship, the better the supplies are. We're just going to sit here, take a few shots. I mean, my hull damage is fine, right? I just really want to do a bit of damage to this guy before I jump over. I don't even have to, though. I've got, you know, my 5 versus, well, my 6 versus them all, right? So they're going to be like, oh man, we've taken a bunch of damage. And I'm like, yeah boy, we're going to get across this, and we're going to deal with you. So we'll keep our medic just back a little here, just so that he can get in and help out probably this man here. You're like, yo, Mr. Cannonballs, we're going to keep you going. So this is why I picked the medic, because look at this guy. He is tanking 2 of them, right? And he's got no worries with the medic keeping him alive. He's just like, yo. So we've actually done no damage to this guy, which seems great, right? But to me, I feel like the less damage you do to these guys, the more chance you have of getting better results out of anything. Plus, you saw it was pretty quick to board and to get them down. We fairly much exchanged maybe a few rounds of fire. I think we took 1, and we were in, right? Which is a lot better. I mean, at the start, you kind of think, oh man, I should just keep shooting this boat and shooting this boat and shooting this boat till it's dead. It's really not the way to go. Ramming, you're no longer doing damage to anyone. Suddenly we have a whole lot of supplies, and we've just looted the hell out of this thing. And I'm not even bothering to fire my cannons, right? I'm just firing this and this to maybe shred up the crew just a little. So one of the other tips I'd like to show is this meter down here. Once the cultists start coming at you, if a cultist ship comes at you, you get no money for either capturing it or destroying it. Halifron or the Kraken, they just do damage to your ship, right? So something's coming and you're like, oh man, this sucks. The thing is you can kind of ignore this stuff and you just head straight for the port here, and as soon as you hit a port, nothing will chase you in. So what I do sometimes is I will sit around a port when I get up to 3 bars, and I'll be like, look, I don't really want to take damage. I really don't want to face the Kraken, the cultist, or the Halifron. So I will just jump straight into a port as soon as the beacon comes up, and you're clear of them, right? Lastly, I'd like to go over a couple of things that I spend my money on and in what order. So obviously, once we've got the armor plates and the harpoons on, what other things do I look for? Generally, I'll look for stuff like both the rigging here to get an extra mast section, or the helm level 2. Generally, it'll be the third mast first. The reason it's the third mast first is because then you can close in on ships a lot easier. So you don't have to chain shot them quite as much. Most times you won't even have to chain shot them at all. You'll just close straight on in because you are the quicker of the boats. And the wheelhouse here, the helm, I generally upgrade that as well, because then things like if you do get trapped by a kraken, you can get off fairly easily, since your maneuver section upgrades a little bit quicker. On the front of weapons, I tend to look for things that will distract the crew a little. So I will change my cannons over for things that do hull cracks, just to distract the enemy. I don't really want to do I don't really care about doing a lot of damage to the ship, the enemy ship, because I'm not looking to sink them most of the times. I'm just looking to board. So I just tend to forget about things that will do any damage to the ship. Sometimes I will replace my grape shot here with the sniper, just to do direct damage to one guy. If you're gaining on most ships, you can think about replacing your chain shot as well. I tend to get the mortar that will do damage to the crew, or to keep them down. Things like the acid bombs generally good, because you can hit the whole crew, sort of wear them down, and keep them generally occupied with themselves. If you want, you can splash it down onto the cannons and get rid of them there. It's up to you how you want to play, but I find you nearly always want to be boarding, right? So why not get you weaponry that's going to get you on board and against the enemy better off, right? So if they've got a Halifron or two, drop the acid bomb on. They won't heal up. They'll just come at you already mangled. Drop the mortar on top of the Halifrons. Shoot the Halifrons. Do any damage you can to them. It's great. I don't look for things that do high hull damage, just because I'm not interested in blowing them apart at all. And generally I look for things like, I would love to get the 20% armor as soon as you can, since that's another 10% effective health. The automatic water pumps, the automatic winch just in case you fail a brace. The automatic water pumps because sometimes you don't really want to be repairing your ship, you just want to be jumping across and engaging. And that's it for my tips and tricks for abandoned ship. Hey guys, thanks again for watching. If you like what you've seen, hit that subscribe button, or leave me a comment on anything you want to see in the future.